Hello and welcome to Chakra News. I'm privileged to have with me on my show today Ruslan Pukhov. Ruslan is director of the Center for Analysis of Strategies and Technologies. He's based in Moscow and he joins me on the show from Moscow. Ruslan, welcome to Chakra News.
Thank you for invitation. My pleasure.
Ruslan, I've known you for many years, but we live in interesting times as always, but times in 2025 are very interesting indeed. We've just seen the large-scale use of Russian hardware, Russian military hardware during Operation Sindoor. And as I've said, that the results of Operation Sindoor would not have been what it was, but for the Russian systems. The S-400s were used, and of course the BrahMos, the Indo-Russian supersonic cruise missile, was used as well. As an analyst who's covered Russian hardware for many years, what's your take on this from Moscow? How do you see this use of Russian systems to bring that edge into the Indian military?
We still don't know all the results, especially now that both sides, Indian and Pakistani, apart from military operation, also have a very strong psyops all over the globe. Right. That's why we don't see the whole picture. But what we can say now for sure, that the Russian made or partially Russian designed weapons used by Indian in this particular Indian side, but in this particular short conflict was very successful because we are particularly strong since Soviet time in construction and usage of air defense and ground-to-ground missiles. It's our particular feature also with artillery, with heavy artillery. And I think this coupling of Soviet legacy, modern Russian design, and Indian application in the local context brought these fruits that basically Pakistan is backed up.
Right, absolutely. And Ruslan, the Air Chief Marshal AP Singh said recently that he specifically named the S-400 air defense missile system as having taken out several Pakistani Air Force aircraft, including a high-value target, which we believe is an airborne early warning and control system. And he mentioned that one of these kills was taken at extreme ranges, something like 300 kilometers. It's possibly a world record for a system of this kind, taking out an aircraft at extended ranges like this. Tell us about the S-400, the evolution of the system. What makes it such a formidable air defense system?
I think for the time being, S-400 is the most performant air defense system in Russian expert inventory, and probably in general in Russian inventory when we're speaking about mass production.
Right.
Because all the systems which supposed to be more powerful than S-400, they are produced in homeopathical doses, and in fact, they are still on kind of trial, even if they are in the forces. S-400, the system which basically was introduced in Russian armed forces more than a decade ago, and now is exported. The most interesting thing, we still remember that there was a huge discussion in India whether it's worth buying S-400 or Indians should economize these funds allocated for the purchase and basically invest them in local production. And it was a brave decision of Prime Minister Modi,
yes,
who basically took this decision when there was a big controversy between the services. And we show that it proved right. Because this system showed very well both in Russia during the war with Ukraine and also in India. The funny story that we can somehow send that S-400, it's very deep modernization of S-300, more powerful radar, the missiles of different range. If S-300 has the missiles of only long range, that's why if you need to engage a cheap target, which come close, you basically waste an expensive missile.
Right.
S-400, this is the system which uses three types of the missiles, short range, medium range, and long range. Right. But even with the previous S-300 of the first generation, of the first series of production produced at the very end of 80s, beginning of 90s, Ukrainians managed to cause lots of problems for us. And we see that basically one of the revolutions in military affairs, which we see Now, both in Ukraine, also over the Iranian skies, Israeli, Middle Eastern skies, that air defense in general is more powerful than combat aviation.
Right.
That the sky is so contested, the sky is so full of deadly iron and fire,
right,
that we cannot use the combat aviation in the same manner as we used to be as we used to use. Sorry for the tautology. Let's say a couple of decades ago.
right.
I also think that the mixed results of use of Rafale aircraft in Indian inventory, it's also partially due to this fact. And
Right.
another problem, even if aircraft is powerful, if you
Right.
don't have a long arm, and to best of my knowledge, French refused to sell long-range missile. The
Right.
good aircraft with a good radar, if it has only short-range missile, can be basically combated by a longer missile. What happened, in fact, in the skies during this operation, then Indians lost it.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
why
Yes.
we
So,
supposed to draw lessons.
right.
We supposed to outgun and outthink our enemies, because war, it's not only about who shoot first and whose inventory is more deadly, but it's about who thinks better.
Who thinks better indeed. And I was talking to one of our foremost air power strategists, and he mentioned how the S-400 is being used by the Indian Air Force as a system. It's a defensive system, but he says that we are using it as for offensive defense, as in we use it to, hunt targets of opportunity as they emerge deep inside Pakistani airspace. I mean, given Pakistan's geographical constraints, the S-400 becomes a very formidable system. But, there's another question I want to ask you related to this, Ruslan, because you're a very keen observer of images and signaling that the political establishment sends out. And if you notice that in just after Operation Sindoor, Prime Minister Modi made his appearance at an airbase in India, at the Adampur airbase. And behind him, we saw for the first time an S-400 missile launcher. It's never been seen in public until that moment. You see India's political class signaling that their confidence in Russian hardware. And how do you see this playing out in the next couple of months, given the kind of pressure India-US relations are facing? Do you see an opportunity for Russia here to maybe for arms sales, for a new, strategic partnership? What's your take on this?
My firm belief that we are passing to the new stage, and in future we'll see more successful joint ventures like BrahMos. For the time being, to tell the truth, BrahMos is the only real success with S capital, because all other joint ventures is mostly kind of assembly line of Russian weapons, but not joint design. I'm absolutely sure that soon would be more joint ventures to come. And I think it's a kind of divine bliss that India has a controlling stake in BrahMos. Because imagine if it would have been Russians. Now, with the global pressure on Russia, it would be absolutely impossible to buy necessary components from the third market.
Right.
Now India can do it because it's predominantly not Russian-Indian, but Indo-Russian enterprise. And I think we should draw these lessons that sometimes it's much more interesting to be a junior partner of your trusted partner than to be a major partner, at least technically and juridically. Another point, India made a very great leap in defense technologies, in R&D, and the success which India face now in arms import globally, and not only like it was, let's say, 10 years ago, to the countries like Seychelles, who are more or less spiritually and financially depending on India, and basically they're binding on Indian funds. Right. Now people basically cash and carry. I think Russia, once the war with Ukraine is over, and Russia can look and buy certain things from India, especially in the area of defense electronics,
Right.
some other components, some materials, some pharma, because our pharmaceutical sector was very dependent on West, and they refused to sell us extremely important thing even for civilian and children cure. That's why I think we are facing a new stage in our cooperation, which would be much more deeper, much more pragmatic, and I think, to tell the truth, much more profitable financially for India.
Right, absolutely. So that's for that the war in Ukraine has to stop. It's as critical as that for this new phase of.
I'm absolutely sure that war with Ukraine will stop. It doesn't mean that it will stop right after the summit,
right,
in Alaska, because after almost 4 years of such a bloody conflict, it cannot be stopped overnight.
Yes,
it's supposed to be stopped by stages. But
right.
Even if it, let's say, the hostilities largely will stop by New Year, I think it would be a huge success.
Right, absolutely. So, I was going to ask you about the summit in Alaska. Now, the interesting choice of territory and the timing of the meeting. That's the 15th of August, whereas the end of, the Second World War. It's the 80th anniversary, literally, on that date. You have the meeting taking place in Alaska, former Imperial Russian territory. It's just across the Bering Strait. And you're looking at possibly ending one of the most savage conflicts of the 21st century. Do you see this as a Yalta moment, another, a redivision of Europe in that sense, that what could unfold there?
Yalta, it's a pejorative word for, let's say, West world. Yeah.
Right.
That's why when they hear Yalta, they almost are ready to take the saber and fight. That's why I prefer to use some other terminology.
Right.
But it's absolutely clear that some kind of deal in the area of European security, or probably even Eurasian security, must be discussed.
Right.
Because Russia feel vulnerable, and we basically have no right to think in terms of declarations. We should think and judge in terms of military potential. And obviously, collective West and NATO are much more potent than Russia. Right. And we also should say blankly that Russia is fighting this war without allies. Right. Let's see that we have fans. We have people who support us morally, and they understand, like they feel our pain. Let's India, Serbia, China, but they are not our allies. They're quite neutral in this conflict.
Right.
Ukraine has 3 dozens of allies which supplied with the weapons, intelligence information, pour money into its corrupt economy. That's why we are not only facing kind of Ukrainians, we are facing a collective West. And that's also one of the reasons why we achieved such modest results on the ground. But once again, I would like to repeat, this fight is not about grounds in Ukraine.
Right.
It's about our future. And it's about basically how would we feel. Imagine that India would have been without 2/3 of its, so to speak, independent kingdoms which joined Republic of India, let's say 80 years back. How you would feel if in these kingdoms would have been hostile governments.
Right.
And orally they would have been saying that we are friendly to India, but in fact, in practice, their military build-up, their propaganda would have been anti-Indian. Right. I also think that you would feel quite differently. The same thing when some observers said that Ukraine is an independent state and Russia has no voice in its internal affairs. Imagine United States having 0 voice in Canadian and in Mexican affairs.
Right.
If would be anti-American government in Mexico and the anti-American build-up in Canada, I'm absolutely sure that their reaction would have been much more harsh than Russian one. Right. That's why if we'll put propaganda aside and if we'll think in terms of real things, and we should find some kind of solutions which probably will not satisfy all sides, but
Right.
at least would be acceptable for all sides.
Right, absolutely. Talking about acceptable to all sides, there is, while on the topic of the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia has captured vast territory. 20% of Ukraine is what we're hearing. Would Russia actually give up that kind of territory, which is it's captured with an enormous sacrifice of soldiers and hardware and all of that?
It's not easy for me to judge because it's a question of negotiations. But I think all options are on the table.
Right.
Because basically even the territory which we acquired and we are not going to cede, it's almost a territory of total destroy, and
Right.
and it's need to be reconstructed.
Right.
That I think after the armistice or even peace deal, it's not the end of the story; it's just the beginning of the story
Right.
to integrate these territories. That's why I think it would be stupid, especially for non-governmental expert like me, to say no. Never say never.
Right. Never say never indeed. And, coming back to the India-Russia summit, we have President Putin traveling to New Delhi very soon. We're being told before the end of October, as early as that. What do you see the two heads of government actually sitting and talking about? I'm aware of the fact that they have an extremely warm relationship. Russia was the first country that Prime Minister Modi visited last year during his third term. What would they talk about really, apart from this new strategic alignment?
My vision is the following: that apart from usual subjects like defense trade, energy, diamonds, and some other commerce, we should more think about the permanent place of India in Security Council.
Right.
It's absolutely clear that it's time for India to have a more strong voice in international affairs, and not only regionally but also globally. Yeah.
Right.
And basically, there are several countries which claim that they can, let's say, occupy this place. But there is a lousy joke, for example, about Brazil. Brazil is a country of the future, and it will always be. Brazil is a big country. Brazil is a powerful country, but we see that it's very precarious. It's very dependent on the United States.
Right.
We see that this country is not even controlling fully its own territory,
Right.
with certain issues. That's why, despite its strong posture internationally and its important role, it's still rather regional power.
Right.
Yes, it's probably power number one in Western Hemisphere. But still, let's say blankly, let's face it, if we need to make a choice between India, Brazil, and some other country like South Africa, who would represent, let's say, global South or the new strong players, I think there is no doubt that it should be India.
Right.
Simply by the calculation of all these factors, it would be well ahead of all other, so to speak, contenders. And I'm absolutely sure that it's one of the topics which would be discussed, and Indians should know that they will have full support of Russia.
Right, absolutely. And what about the military relationship? Like you mentioned, that there's a possibility that more joint ventures could be worked upon, like the enormously successful BrahMos example, a joint venture which has been in effect for over 25 years now. And so a remarkable success story. You see cooperation like this in other areas, in areas that we have.
It's not easy for me to judge about the technical aspects.
Right.
I think it's time to think not about high tech, but also about high hum.
Right.
Because Russia has enormous experience now with this war. Basically, there are two countries who are much more advanced now because they paid this tax with blood. It's Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
I can hardly imagine Indian-Ukrainian joint military academy in New Delhi, but right. I can easily imagine a Russian-Indian research center. It's absolutely clear that it's supposed to be kind of fusion knowledge, fusion of practices. That's why apart from, I repeat, apart from high tech, we also should think about high human, because to best of my knowledge, most of Indian thinking is very much on the kind of Anglo English speaking ideas.
Right.
That's why, in a sense, Indian military thought is largely kind of still in colonial times. It's
Right.
not only a problem of language. It's not only problem of past. By the way, the same issue is China, because Chinese has no its indigenous military thought,
Right.
military theory. They cosplay different Western ideas, try to adapt them sometimes in a very
Right.
hectic way on the local ground. That's why I think we should also think about it, not only about how to produce jointly the iron and software.
Yes.
Military thought. We should jointly think about. Thanks God that even Soviet Union and Russian Empire never had a common border,
Right.
because a border, it's not only the blessing, but it's also a problem.
It-
We never had the territorial claims. That's why our joint legacy is extremely positive
yes.
for having such sensitive things like joint military studies, joint military research,
Right.
and military thinking.
Right, absolutely. And your point about Indian solutions for Indian wars is absolutely spot on. In fact, that is the thinking now, that we need to move away from Western paradigms and look at what really fits our defense requirements. And you can tailor make solutions for Indian to fight Indian wars. And I think that's where the BrahMos has moved in. I mean, we have been using them in a way, I think, that the Soviet designers of the BrahMos missile thought very differently from, use it as a long-range precision strike land attack missile, with steep dive, attacking air bases and all that. I think that's things that this is primarily an anti-ship, a long-range anti-ship missile.
So also, when I'm speaking about get rid of Western dominance, it doesn't mean that totally reject it.
Right.
Both Soviet and Russian military technologies largely rely on Western technologies.
Yes. Right.
In some cases, British, Swedish, even United States weapons. But once Imperial Russia and Soviets took this technology, they successfully managed to indigenize them. Like
right.
Mosin Nagant, it used to be Nagant system,
the rifle
became Mosin Nagant, yeah, that's why I think Indians should think this way. It's not a question of find its own Chuchhewe as DPRK people try to do, but it's about to become Indian. No matter there is no Indian, Russian, or American laws of physics. There are just laws of physics.
Right. Yeah, well put, indeed. And finally, Ruslan, I have to ask you about India and China. And what's the view from Moscow on this closeness now between India and China? The Prime Minister is visiting China very shortly for the SCO summit. There has been a history of incidents on the border. We've lost soldiers 5 years back. You think that this the way India-US ties are now makes it gives New Delhi a greater.
It's not an easy subject for Russian expert to talk to.
Yes.
It would be dishonest from my side to tell that we have only good things in relations with China.
Right.
I would not lie you that our relations are complex and complicated.
Yes.
That last 3.5 years we depend more. We became more dependent on China to compare to pre-Ukraine war.
Right.
But one thing which I'm absolutely sure, that India has a very sober approach towards relations with China.
Right.
From one point of view, strong military relations,
right.
Strong military build-up, but at the same time not rejecting China, engaging China. That's why it's a very bold, brave, and very full of wisdom decision of Prime Minister to visit China to participate not only in bilateral but also in multilateral formats to influence China. Because the good thing about Chinese, by the way, in a contrast with Russians and Indians, can be influenced. Their culture, it's a culture of trades. They are slightly less kshatri than Indians and Russians. And basically, if you use the set of tools from coercion to negotiations, you can achieve results much better than simply blackmailing your big partner. That's why I think that India on the right path of defending its interests.
Right, absolutely. India's on the right path, and we hope that things work out well and wars come to an end, so we can get back to establishing better ties with all the countries of the world. But thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Pleasure all mine.
Ruslan Pukhov, thanks so much.
Thank you, Sandeep.